dad is at polishing the pulpit this weekend. Has been there for a couple of days, will be for a couple of days. And so he has asked me to review chapter 11 of, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to, I heard that was, okie dokie. I will move it. We are, he finished chapter 12 in 1 Corinthians, so I'll be starting with chapter 13. I love talking about chapter 13 in 1 Corinthians. As most of us know, the Bible was not written in chapters and verses, and it wasn't divided up that way. Well, one book was Psalms, the book of Psalm. It was when it was written, it was divided in chapters. So, for a bit of a context, I am going to go back a little bit into chapter 12 and starting at about verse 28. And God hath set some in the church, first apostles, secondarily prophets, thirdly teachers, after that miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, governments, diversities of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Are all workers of miracles? Have all the gifts of healing? Do all speak tongues? Do all interpret? But covet earnestly the best gifts, and yet show I unto you a more excellent way. Chad talked about this a little last week. The church at Corinth, they had all these things. They had prophets and teachers and miracles and those that could heal. It wasn't one person that could do all of those things. It was different members of that congregation, different members that should have been relying on each other for support, should have been congregating. And that's the way God designed the local church. He wants us to rely on one another, wants us to support one another. But these people weren't doing it. They weren't doing their job to glorify God. They were doing it to some of them were doing it to glorify themselves. So that's where we come to verse 31. But covet earnestly the best gifts. The Greek word here means is a word, and y'all know that I am a Greek scholar, and no, I'm not. So I'm going to mispronounce all the Greek words that I say today. But this one is kriton, and it means better or nobler. But covet earnestly the nobler gifts. Do it in a noble way. Do it to glorify God. Do it to help others. And yet show I unto you a more excellent way. So Paul is saying, if you will do this in a way that glorifies God, you will see a more excellent way. And that's the way we're going to talk about today in chapter 13. Chapter 13, verse 1. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have not charity, I am become as as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. I'm reading from the King James Version. I believe the New King James says, and have not love. The word here, again in Greek, is agape, which means compassion and benevolence. Now, we can have compassion on someone, but if we don't do anything about it, then it's not agape, it's not love. Though I speak with the tongues of men and angels, some false churches today will use this and other verses to say that that we have speaking in tongues today. That just anybody can do that. They can learn to speak in tongues. What this was a language. It wasn't gibberish that they were talking. It wasn't some a series of rapidly spoken words. That it was a language. Some people have said that the tongues of angels was what people, when they speak in tongues today, that's what they're saying, the tongues of angels. Nowhere in the Bible, when an angel has communicated with a human, did an interpreter need to be there. When in Genesis 18, when the three angels were outside Lot's tent, they were talking to him. They said, "Where's Sarah?" Right away, Abraham said, "She's in the tent." They didn't need. Angels spoke to those people in their language. The same thing in the next chapter, chapter 19, when Lot and his family are living in Sodom, and the two angels show up at the door. They knock on the door. They talk back and forth through the door, and eventually go in the house and pull them out. Those angels didn't. It wasn't gibberish. They didn't struggle to communicate. Those angels talked to them in their language. Even in Numbers chapter 22, when Balaam is talking with his donkey, that's one of the questions I'm going to have for God is, why didn't Balaam ever question why is my donkey talking? But he didn't. The angel of the Lord spoke through that donkey to Balaam. He understood. It wasn't gibberish. I have a friend, Jonathan. We met in preaching school. He actually, from Cedartown, worshipped at Rock Mart, and we had to go to Memphis to meet each other. He was raised in charismatic church. Some people call it Pentecostal. And the other day I was talking to him about this lesson, and he reminded me that when he was a young man, I think he was maybe 14 or so, they wanted to teach him how to speak in tongues. And well, I did ask him if I could read his reply, so I'll do that. He said that the minister told me to just say Jesus, 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 Jesus over and over while listening, hearing, to soft melodic music from the praise band. They also had the room darkened with colorful lights, sight, and a fog machine. They smeared fragrant oil on my forehead. I felt them holding their hands on my head and rocking me back and forth, touch. while quenching their eyes tight. Maybe he meant squinching. I don't know. Uh, tight and shouting, "Give it to him, Lord! Give it to him! Let it be, let it be, Lord! Confirm your Spirit within him, Lord, in the name of Jesus." A lot of what happened, I wasn't realizing at the time, but noticed to be very similar to hypnosis later. In some methods of hypnosis, they will try to exercise as many senses as possible to get you into a trance. And fortunately for Jonathan, a few years later, he met somebody who shared the gospel with him, converted him, and now he's not in that. But it's good that he had that experience. I think it's a good thing for the brotherhood. Questions, comments, Robert?
There's a difference between giving the gifts of the Spirit and someone saying, we're going to teach you how to speak in tongues.
Right.
Because when they received the gift of the Spirit, it wasn't something that they were taught, it was something that was given.
That's true. And that's Jonathan's point, and my point. The world today, in those false churches, has been misled for years and is misleading others. So they will have to answer for that. There's peer pressure. I really do believe it's some kind of self-hypnosis that is specifically what Jonathan was talking about. Yeah, you get in a group of people and everybody's saying, "Hey, I feel it, I feel it." Well, you raise your hand and say, I feel it too. So what is Paul talking about here? Is he saying that angels are going to come down and teach us how to speak in tongues? No, that's not what he's talking about. He's using what's called hyperbole. It's a writing fashion. Have you ever heard somebody or said yourself, "I'm so hungry I could eat a horse"? That's hyperbole. It's exaggerating to prove a point. And like, my feet are killing me. I love you to the moon and back. I don't understand that one, but it's an we all know what that is. It's an exaggeration. So what he's saying is, even if angels come to you and you do not have charity, you do not have agape, you do not have love, your work is going to be useless. A sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal, that's an irritating noise. That's not instruments used in worship. That's just an. Have you ever had a neighbor that had a lot of wind chimes? And at first, it sounds great. I lived down in Florida for a while, and in this trailer park, and it seemed that this one family, they got some wind chimes, and then it just spread, and you could go outside and you couldn't hear the ocean anymore, and I didn't like it. So, but maybe they did. So, but sounding brass, tinkling, that's just an annoying, meaning the tongues of angels, men and angels, is an annoyance. It's just wind. It's just noise. It's the same. Let's look at Galatians chapter 1. Galatians chapter 1 and verse 8. But though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. This is Paul. He's not suggesting that an angel is actually going to proclaim a different gospel. The point is one of emphasis. There would be no validity in it, and he would fall victim to divine wrath. That's what he's doing here. Let's look at verse number 2. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, agape, I am nothing. Without agape, all these abilities, all these gifts are meaningless. Agape has to do with the mind. It's us deliberately being benevolent. Love is not a simple emotion. Agape is not a simple emotion that rises and falls, and it's something that we do deliberately every day. That's the Christian life, the way of life. So without agape, all these things are useless. Verse 3. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. Even if we give away all our possessions, while we withhold our heart from God, it will profit us nothing. You know, we see this from time to time, people trying to, what we call, buy their way into the church or buy their way into heaven. And I think sometimes their intentions are mostly good. They're wanting to help people. But without their full intentions, the Bible says it profits them nothing. Comments? Questions? Rebuttal? Huh.
Love's an intended action toward the betterment of another individual.
Mm.
God demonstrated his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. When Christ gave, when it says that God so loved the world, it's an intended action he has toward mankind that was demonstrated in the giving of his Son.
It's good stuff.
Chapter 12 delineated gifts that were given to that generation, not gifts that are present today.
That's correct.
They were also given an order of importance. And it seemed that the church of Corinth desired the lesser gift, that was the speaking of tongues, because they got more attention from it. That was the emphasis of chapter 12. Chapter 13 is going to deal with the cessation of those gifts and their going away. We're going to see that before we get to the end of it. And agape love is a love that seeks the highest good.
Mm-hmm.
There are three different Greek words dealing with love. Agape love is the higher of what's called. And seeking is action. But it also has at its base the intent of that which is best for the other individual.
That's right. I didn't point that out. In verses 28 and 29, it lists that list of apostles, prophets, teachers, miracles. Tongues is on the bottom. And it is listed order of importance. Jimmy brought up one thing about a checklist. I think we do that with other things too, and we do that sometimes with worship. We say, "Oh, we've sang, we prayed. Okay, here comes the Lord's Supper," and we check it off. But in John 4:23, but the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit. Verse 24. And they that worship him must worship in spirit and truth. In spirit means that we do it intentionally. We do it on purpose. We know what we're doing. We know why we're here. And we're doing it, as all three of you have said, with intentions. This is my intentions. My intentions today were to come and worship. Good stuff. Right.
That's authorized. But if we do those things authorized without the proper motive, without the proper heart, they're worthless. It's vain worship. The context of the worshiping in spirit and truth is one that I don't think we fully understand. You can't get it half right.
Right.
You can't get the truth right without the spirit. You can't get the spirit right without the truth. They go together. They're not mutually exclusive. But we have a tendency, sometimes unintentionally, if not directly, to suggest that we've got this part right, now we got to work on this. They don't work separately.
Mm-hmm. Verse 3. Oop. So Paul has said, I will show you, in chapter 12, verse 31, I will show you a more excellent way. And that's what he's doing in chapter 13. We're at verse 4. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up. Long suffering. Long suffering is the Greek word here. Literally means taking a long time to get angry. I know I've known some patient men, some patient, humble men. One was Ray Spake. That's when I am not patient, when I am not long suffering, when I'm not that, I try to think of him. He was my Sunday school teacher. Wednesday night, he taught. It seemed like Ray was always teaching a class, and I try to pattern my life after him, or I pattern my humbleness and patience after him. In the New Testament, this word it has to do with how one should respond to abuse, people being mean to us, people neglecting us, it's long suffering is something that takes practice. Patience takes practice. A friend of mine says, don't pray to God and ask for patience, because you'll get it. You'll get a lot of practice, but we should ask for it. It's always easier to recognize when someone's not being patient, and to not be like that. Comments? Questions? and is kind. Let's go to Proverbs 19. That's in the Old Testament. Proverbs 19 and verse 22. The desire of a man is his kindness, and a poor man is better than a liar. Then Luke chapter 6. Luke chapter 6 and verse 35. But love ye your enemies, and do good, and lend, hoping for nothing again, and your reward shall be great, and ye shall be the children of the highest, for he is kind unto the unthankful and to the evil. Kindness includes attributes like friendliness, compassion, generosity, tenderness. Kind is like patience, I guess. And all of these are similar in that they take practice. I don't know of anyone that was converted and immediately could do all these things and was just the perfect Christian the first few weeks or days or yeah, exactly.
Scott, I see in the list of these things that love is dealing with the influence. It's dealing with our influence on the world and not the world's influence on us. Because if we're kind, if we're long-suffering, we're drawing people to us. And if we're not careful, we can draw people away from us.
That's a good point. A lot of times we talk about how we want to keep the world out of our lives, the world out of the church, the world out of... We don't talk much about how we want to influence them, influence the world. Now that's evangelism, and we do talk about that. But I think what Robert was talking about is just our everyday going to work, going to the grocery store, living our life. People see that. And some people that they haven't been to church ever. Their parents didn't go to church, so they didn't go to church. Will recognize somebody that's a Christian, and they may not say, "Well, that guy's a Christian. He acts that way because he's a Christian." They may just say, "Well, he's a good guy. That's a good man." Next one is charity envieth not. Charity is like jealousy. Jealousy is a feeling of displeasure caused by the prosperity of another, coupled with a desire to wrest the advantage from the person who is the object of one's envy. That's a long definition, isn't it? I think most of us know what jealousy is. Somebody has something that I either want or I don't want them to have. Maybe it's a new house. Maybe it's some kind of election. Maybe they are the mayor, or you have something I want and I don't have. or the thing you have is better than what I have. Look at Matthew chapter 27. And we don't talk a lot about jealousy. It's dangerous. Look at start at verse 16. And they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ? For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. Because of envy, Christ was put on that. That's one of the reasons. Because of envy, Christ was put on that cross. Comments, questions? Mm-hmm. When you were kind of searching for a word there, I was thinking sobering. That's a sobering thought. It can be, unless they refuse to get their heart right, and then they're probably going to leave in the next little bit. And that's what happens. Sometimes a sermon is preached or a lesson is taught, and people harden their hearts. They say, well, I know that's what he said, but that can't be me. No, that's not me. No. Vaunteth not itself. Let's look at also Proverbs 22. I'm sorry, 27. And verse 2. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, and not thine own lips. No one likes a braggart. Used to be more common. You would hear that. Don't be a brag. Don't brag. Don't brag on yourself. Don't blow your own horn. Don't toot your own horn. I don't hear it much now. We're not to be boastful. Next one is not puffed up. The arrogant person is someone who is inflated with their personal pride. They anytime they're talking, it's always about them. They turn the conversation back to them. It's not always a fun person to be around. Let's look at Jeremiah chapter 49. Jeremiah 49 and verse 16. Thy terribleness hath deceived thee in the pride of thine heart, O thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, that holdest the height of the hill. Though thou shouldest make thy nest as high as the eagle, I will bring thee down from thence, saith the Lord. Pride will deceive the heart. Daniel chapter 5. And verse 20. But when his heart was lifted up, and his mind hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. Pride will harden your mind. And Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 18. How much better is it to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding? Well, that's not it. That was verse 16. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. You know, you've probably heard that quoted forever. Pride goeth before a fall. Pride is, it goes back to what Jimmy was talking about earlier. This church at Corinth, they read this letter, probably read it in a public manner, copied it, passed it around. And some people had pride. They were prideful. And when they read it, they said, "That's not me. That's not me. Oh, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. That's not me." Pride is one of those dangers. Look at verse 5. Ooh. Verse 5. Doth not have itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. The first one, doth not behave itself unseemly. Unseemly, bad manners, brutal rudeness. Agape does not deliberately seek to be offensive. Do you know somebody that deliberately seeks to be offensive? I think most of us do. That's not a good person to be around. That's not a fun person to be around either. Especially if their offensiveness is directed towards you. Seeketh not her own. This means someone who is self-centered, egocentric, selfish. We cannot be God-centered and self-centered at the same time. Our goal is to be selfless. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 12. And verse 15. And I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved. This is Paul talking to the Corinthians again, and he's telling them that he will give everything for the church. And Philippians chapter 2 and verse 20. For I have no man like-minded who will naturally care for your state, for your welfare. This is talking about Timothy. And in same book, same chapter, verses 5 through 8. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ, whom being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal of God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even to the death of the cross. This is talking about Jesus. So these three men, and there's many others in the Bible, humbled themselves to be servants to God and to man. Not quickly provoked. Agape does not have a short fuse. You know, some people are on the ready to explode. Some people go through their whole day waiting to find some error that somebody else has done so they can just blow up. Those people aren't fun to be around. Thinketh no evil. Now, when I study the Bible, I usually have 2 or 3 different Bibles, and I compare them to try to get the best meaning of words and verses. Thinketh no evil. I had to look up the Greek word on this, and the Greek word is, and I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, logizomai. Beth, do you happen to know what that word means? What? It does. It means an accountant. Beth's an accountant. So that and that's why I looked it up, because the ASV is one of the ones that I use, and I thought, well, that is totally different than the KJV and the New King James. So what does it mean? It causes me to dig deeper, and that's a good thing. It means to take into inventory, an accountant taketh not account of evil. Agape does not keep score. Have you ever been around someone who, you make that mistake for the day, and they see it, and they blow up, and the next thing you know, they're saying, well, 3 years ago, when you... Paul.
More than that, it tends to be, I saw Barry at the liquor store the other day. Now, why was Barry in there?
Right.
Did he go in there to take a brother out that didn't need to be in there?
Right.
Did he go in because his cell phone was dead and he needed to call for help? Why did he? A Christian doesn't assume the worst. That's what this is talking about. A Christian assumes the best first. They don't make accusation without
Right.
proof. That's what taking no account of evil is you don't assume because you saw somebody somewhere what they were doing or why they were there.
That's right. That's right. Good job. We are out of time, and I don't know if who will finish this, either Chad or myself, but come back next week. We will continue.